All right, so today we're diving into the lives of these Japanese women who came to America in the early 1900s as picture brides,
Yeah,
and it's a fascinating but kind of heartbreaking story.
it is.
Imagine, building a whole new life based on just photographs and letters.
It's hard to imagine.
Like seriously, what do you think that journey must have been like?
Yeah, it's a really unique part of American history for sure. And Julie Otsuka's novel, The Buddha in the Attic, gives us this amazing look into their world.
You know what I love about this book is it's not like your typical history book.
Right.
Instead of focusing on one person's story, it uses this collective we voice to share the experiences of all these women together.
Right, and that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah.
It lets us understand their shared hopes, anxieties, and dreams, even though each woman faced her own unique challenges too.
Right, exactly. So today we're going to unpack all of that using the Buddha in the attic as our guide.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's start with the journey itself. The novel opens with chapter 1, Come Japanese. And it paints this really vivid picture of their departure from Japan.
Yeah, and it's important to remember the historical context here.
Yeah.
Japan in the early 1900s was facing economic hardship, like serious hardship and limited opportunities, especially for women.
Right.
America, on the other hand, was seen as this land of promise and opportunity.
Exactly.
But it's more than just economics, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, leaving your entire family and culture behind and traveling to a completely foreign country
Right.
based on like a photograph,
Based on just a photo.
it speaks to a level of desperation,
Mm-hmm.
but also incredible courage, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I think it also shows us a lot about the societal pressures and expectations placed on women at the time, both in Japan and in America.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
Yeah,
It's easy to forget how different things were back then.
right.
Okay, so these women arrive in America full of hopes and dreams. But as we see in chapter 2, First Night, the reality is often much harsher than they imagined.
Yes, very much so. There's one passage that really stood out to me.
Okay.
It says, on our first night, our husbands took us to their farms, where we were shown the chickens we would feed and the fields we would weed and the shacks we would try to turn into homes.
Wow.
It's so stark and poignant,
It really is. It makes you realize that these women weren't just coming for a better life.
Right.
They were coming to work.
Yeah.
To build a life for their families from scratch.
Exactly.
Not exactly the romantic picture they might have had in mind.
Not at all. And the arranged marriages themselves added another layer of complexity.
Absolutely.
Imagine being married to someone you've only seen in a photo, someone who might not even speak your language.
Yeah, it's hard to even fathom.
Yeah, it is.
And then on top of all that, there's the challenge of raising children in this completely new world, which the novel explores in chapter 5, Children.
This is where we start to see these questions about identity emerge. How do you hold on to your Japanese heritage while also raising children who are American?
Right.
And especially when those children, the Nisei generation, are facing their own unique set of challenges in a society that often views them as outsiders.
Right. It's a universal dilemma for many immigrant families, even today.
Yeah.
But for Japanese immigrants in the early 20th century, it was compounded by something much more sinister: racism and exclusion.
Exactly. Chapter 3, Whites, doesn't shy away from depicting the prejudice and hostility these women encountered.
Yeah.
And remember, this was a time when anti-Asian sentiment was rampant in America.
Right. And there's this one line in the book that's just gut-wrenching.
Oh, yeah.
The women describe being called Jap Yellow Peril, told to go back where you came from.
It's awful.
It's just a stark reminder of how deeply ingrained these prejudices were.
Yes. And it wasn't just words.
Right.
There were discriminatory laws that limited immigration and even denied citizenship to people of Asian descent.
Wow. So these women are trying to build a life, raise families, all while facing this constant barrage of racism and discrimination.
Right.
It's almost unimaginable.
It is.
And it sets the stage for an even darker chapter in their story,
Yeah.
one that unfolds with the outbreak of World War II. But we'll delve into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
When we left off, we were talking about that rising anti-Japanese sentiment
Right.
before World War II.
Yeah.
And as we know, things took a pretty devastating turn for Japanese Americans during the war.
Yeah. Chapter 6, Traitors, captures that shift really well.
Yeah.
The suspicion, the fear, the accusations of disloyalty.
Yeah.
It all leads to that forced relocation to internment camps, which Otsuka writes about in Chapter 7, Last Day.
It's hard to grasp the injustice of it all. These were American citizens.
Right.
Many born on U.S. soil being stripped of their rights, their homes, their lives.
It's terrible.
It's a dark stain on American history.
What's striking about this part of the book is that sense of bewilderment and betrayal.
Right.
That comes through.
Yeah.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
families were being punished for something they had no control over,
Right.
their ancestry.
It wasn't just the physical displacement either,
Or
right?
no, it wasn't.
It was the loss of community, the disruption of their lives, the psychological trauma inflicted on an entire generation.
And that trauma echoes through the final chapter, a disappearance.
That title is so powerful.
Yeah.
It speaks to the erasure of these communities, the silence that followed their forced removal. It makes you wonder, what was the broader American reaction to this disappearance?
Right.
Did anyone even notice? Did anyone care?
That's a question Otsuka leaves us to think about.
Mm.
The silence in the final chapter is deafening.
Yeah.
It suggests a collective amnesia, a willful forgetting of a community that had been a part of American life.
It's chilling, really. It makes you think about how history is often written by the victors,
Right.
how the stories of marginalized groups can be so easily silenced or erased.
And that's why books like The Buddha in the Attic are so important.
Yeah.
They bring those stories back to life. They challenge us to confront the uncomfortable truths about our past.
I'm curious, though, what about the women themselves?
Yeah.
How did they cope with all of this? How did
Uh-huh.
their identities evolve through these experiences?
Well, I think the novel shows how identity is fluid, constantly shaped by our experiences and circumstances.
Right.
For these women, their sense of self became this complex blend of their Japanese heritage and their American lives.
Yeah, it must have been a constant balancing act.
All right.
Navigating these two worlds, trying to hold on to their traditions while also adapting to a new culture.
Absolutely. And it wasn't always easy.
Yeah.
There were compromises, sacrifices, moments of cultural dissonance.
It makes me think about the title, The Buddha in the Attic. It
Mhm.
feels so symbolic,
Yeah.
like a representation of their hidden culture,
Yeah.
the parts of themselves they had to keep tucked away to survive.
That's a great observation, and it also speaks to the resilience of these women, their ability to preserve their heritage, even when facing so much adversity.
I'm also struck by Otsuka's use of the collective we voice.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful narrative device.
It really immerses you in their shared experience, their collective hopes and fears.
Yeah.
But within that collective voice, you also get these glimpses of individual stories,
Right.
hints of the unique personalities and struggles each woman faced.
It's masterful storytelling. It allows us to connect with these women on a deeply human level, even though their lives were so different from our own.
Exactly. And that's the power of literature, isn't it?
Yeah.
To transport us to different times and places, to
Mm.
make us feel empathy and understanding for people whose lives might seem vastly different from our own.
And The Buddha in the Attic does that so beautifully. It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you think, it makes you feel, it makes you question. It's interesting how The Buddha in the Attic, captures this tension between holding onto your cultural identity and embracing a new way of life.
Yeah, it is. It's something that so many immigrant communities grapple with,
Right.
finding that balance between preserving their heritage and becoming a part of the larger society.
Exactly. And for the children of these picture brides,
Right, the knees.
the Nisi generation, that tension must have been even more pronounced.
Yeah.
Born in America, but often viewed as outsiders.
Right.
They had to navigate this complex world of cultural expectations.
Yeah, it's tough.
It makes me wonder about the long-term impact of all of this.
Uh-huh.
How did the lives of these women and their families shape the landscape of America?
That's a good question.
How did they contribute to the rich tapestry of American culture?
What's fascinating to think about,
Yeah.
their stories remind us that American history is not just like one single story,
Right.
but it's a tapestry woven from countless individual experiences.
Yeah.
And even those experiences that were, difficult and painful,
Right.
they've helped to shape the nation we know today.
It's important to remember that these women weren't just victims of circumstance, though, right?
Yeah.
They were also incredibly strong and resilient.
Right. They were.
They endured hardship, overcame obstacles, and built lives for themselves and their families in a new land.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Their stories are really a testament to the human spirit's capacity for adaptation and perseverance.
Yeah.
They faced incredible challenges, but they never gave up.
Right.
They found ways to create community, preserve their traditions, and pass on their values to future generations.
It's inspiring.
Yeah. It is.
It makes you think about the legacy they left behind, you know?
Okay.
How did their experiences influence subsequent generations of Japanese Americans?
Mhm.
How did they contribute to the fight for civil rights and equality?
That's a really important question, and it's one that we, as readers and as citizens need to keep exploring.
Yeah.
We need to, honor their stories, learn from their struggles,
Mm.
and continue the fight for a more just and equitable society for all.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Buddha in the attic, I'm left with a sense of awe and gratitude.
Me too.
Awe at the strength and resilience of these women,
Yeah.
and gratitude for Julie Otsuka's incredible storytelling.
She's a great writer.
This is a book that I know will stay with me for a long time.
I agree. It's a powerful and moving work of literature that sheds light on a not very well-known chapter of American history.
Right.
And it offers these valuable insights into the, universal experiences of immigration, assimilation, and the search for identity.
It's a book that deserves to be read, discussed, and shared. So to our listeners, we encourage you to seek out the Buddha in the attic and experience its power for yourself.
And as you read it, remember, the individual lives behind that collective we,
Yeah?
the stories that shaped a nation, and the lasting legacy of these incredible women.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to learn more.
Thanks for listening.